Good evening. Bonsoir. Quay. Dia Eve. My name is Dr. Frances Scully. And tonight I want to first of all read, let me see, where was this published? Sorry. This is from the Canadian Jewish News. And here they are reporting on Vivian Silver's sons continue her work and legacy of building peace in Israel, asking how you can bring justice to our grandchildren and not our grandparents. Jonathan Rotman. Okay, this was published June the 6th, 2025. And so in this photo here, we have Jonathan brothers, Jonathan Zeigen on the left and Chen Zeigen, and they visited Canada for an event to honor the legacy and continuation of the work of their mother, Vivian Silver. And this event occurred in Toronto in June 2025. Now, I actually live in Logie Bay, Newfoundland and Labrador, and I would have loved to attend this, and I hope and pray that sometime in the future I will be able to attend an event organised by Women Wage Peace and some of their allies in Canada. In particular, I want to attend events that include Standing Together, and I'll talk a little bit about them. And I'm wearing my Standing Together t-shirt, which is purpley violet, but you can get it in different colors, but that's the color I think they usually wear. And it says, I stand with Israelis and Palestinians for safety, equality, and peace. And I'm going for a walk after this, and I'm going to wear my t-shirt that says, I stand for safety, equality, and peace. Because as a physician, I stand for safety, equality, and peace. And I'm going to make a little sort of side note here, that a few years ago when I was very ill and trying to do stuff for my brain, I signed up and I used to play a lot of an online thing called, I think Lumosity was supposed to be good for your brain, and did quizzes and this sort of thing. And apparently, whatever sort of brain I have, it is totally the opposite to a military brain. And that's not surprising, because I went to medical school in 1973 when I was 17, and I went there because I was very keen to keep people alive. I was very annoyed that the mothers of various people I knew growing up all died, and it had a terrible effect on the the children and whoever was left in the family, and I was not pleased about this at all. So I'm very keen on keeping people alive. Now, in particular, I spent quite a bit of my time working with children, and I'm very keen on keeping babies and children alive, and mothers and women, but boys and girls, everybody. I'm very keen on keeping people alive. Not only that, I'm not a fan of suffering. Not a fan at all. It happens, part of life, but I'm not a fan. I want to do everything I can think of to reduce suffering. Anything I can think of. Now, that's why I study the science of compassion, not because I like suffering, but because I don't like suffering. Yeah. And I'm very interested to know what can be done to decrease suffering and increase joy and peace. And I am absolutely convinced that violence does not increase peace. No, sorry, war does not lead to peace. This is, a misunderstanding. Anyway, but there is the most horrible war going on right now, and people in Gaza are being shot to death, hundreds of them, as they're starving, their food, their water is cut off, and they don't have They don't have anything that's needed for dignity and quality of life and care. They don't have food, they don't have water, they don't have places to wash, they don't have rooms, or they don't have shelter, they don't have, the children are not, since October of 2023, the children have not been going to school, the young people have not been going to their universities and colleges. And as far as I'm concerned, this is terrible and needs to stop. But people can't be going to school and so on while there are bombs going off and guns and so on. So there has to be a total, complete ceasefire there. And that, as far as I'm concerned, the safety part is number one. And I'm sort of irritated with all the people in Canada who I know and love and who I know are very concerned about everything, and they're busy squawking about whether or not to use the word Zionism, it's not the right word, and so on. And you know what? I mean, I grew up in Ireland, and people are fighting over whether you should call Derry, the city of Derry, Derry, or Londonderry. And guess what? No agreement. And that's gone on my entire life. And you know what? It'll go on a lot longer. And another thing, I have learned that not all, but certain of the First Nations in North America called North America Turtle Island. And do I hear everybody calling Canada and the US Turtle Island? No, I do not. No. Now, I try to say Kitamkutuk because for the island of Newfoundland, and nobody has a clue. Many people do not know what I'm talking about. So this business about, colonization was not a good idea, is not a good idea, and we do need to stop it. But just going off the head, because Zionism is a colonial idea, I'm not saying it isn't. I'm just saying that please tell me a single area of our beautiful planet that is not colonized or has not experienced colonization. Like I think we managed to colonize. We humans have managed to colonize and cause harm and destruction almost everywhere we've gone. Collectively, I'm talking about collectively, and collective punishment is not a good thing. Actually, punishment in general does not work terribly well as a deterrent or anything else. It just leads to more and more and more. We have to sort of just stop it. Okay, first of all, a ceasefire. A ceasefire is the first thing we need. Anyway, I want to read a few articles from some. This is the Canadian Jewish News, and they published because I know the Jewish community is fractured. The Muslim Canadians are fractured. And Canadians in general, and my friends in the Avalon chapter of the Council for Canadians are all over the place over many issues at the moment, because there's just too much stuff going on and people don't have enough time to really get to a consensus. And I would say that this is exactly what Felon T-Rump wants. He just likes causing chaos so that normal people who normally can achieve at least a consensus or agree to disagree or decide, at least know what we're disagreeing about, but we can maintain a warm and functioning and helpful and wise relationship, even though we don't agree about everything. We don't have to agree about everything. That's never going to happen. Like, it's never going to happen. We are extremely diverse. That everything living is diverse. No two flakes of snow look the same. No two grains of sand. No two trees. No two leaves. No two human beings. No two animals. Nothing living is identical. We can talk about identical twins, and they may be much, much, much more similar than people who are non-identical twins, but they're still not totally identical. They still will have some different personality traits or whatever. Anyway, so here we have a picture of Jonathan Zeigen, and Chen Zeigen, and they were in Toronto at the beginning of this month, and I had wanted to attend, but I just couldn't afford the time, money, effort, or whatever at this time, and I very much hope I will get there another time. because they lost their mother, Vivian Silver, on October the 7th, 2023. At that time, as we all know, Hamas led an attack in southern Israel, and and now and and Vivian Silver actually grew up in Winnipeg. She was an Israeli Canadian. I'm not sure all the details, but she went to Israel. She was working in kibbutz and she stayed there. Anyway, she was an avowed, dedicated, good human being, helper of other people, and a serious peace activist. And she was the co founder of Women Wage Peace, which brought together 50,000 diverse women in Israel to work for peace. And Israel is not the only country that's diverse and divided. Most countries are diverse and divided. Most families are diverse and divided, at least some of the time. We all pray for harmony and everybody on the same page. Have you ever tried to do a seating arrangement for a family wedding with a lot of people? Worse of it are, you can't sit so and so at so and so because they don't speak. Because anyway, then in case of some of my late husband was Vietnamese, and this is I'm Irish. We have a funny sense of humor. I'm sorry if I'm going to insult all sorts of people. I'm sorry about this, but my late husband used to call himself number 9. He was born into a family of 15, of course, very Roman Catholic. But anyway, and there was one time when we had a great time because there were all these weddings, beautiful weddings going on. But I haven't been to a wedding for ages now, so I'd love to go to a nice wedding. But anyway, at one point, so my husband was one of 15, and he adored his family, actually, particularly his mother and his all 10 of his sisters. And then he also particularly adored his youngest brother and sister, Chung and Hung. And Chung then met a beautiful lady in Montreal when they were both medical students, I think, at McGill. And she was Chinese. And the reason I'm laughing about this is, of course, I am Irish, and people here have said to me, "Oh, you must take the English." I don't actually. I love the English because half of my family are English. A lot of Irish people have relatives in England, and I happen to love my English relatives. And my uncle that lived in London adored them, and I adore them to this day. So I don't hate the English at all. And a lot of my favourite colleagues and people over the years and so on were all, and mentors and great people were all English. Look at David Attenborough. I'm just saying, a lot of English, a lot of musicians. Anyway, so I don't hate the English, no, at all. And I don't see people as being amorphous. I can't even understand people who think like that. It's so stupid. Anyway, but have the English and Irish fought horribly for centuries? Yes. And I just some of it was over language, and I just discovered that in the late 16th century, some absolutely horrible English king murdered 4,000 Cornish people who were objecting to having their Bible translated into Cornish. That was new information to me. I know that a lot of Irish people died for trying to speak their language, and that's why I'm ashamed, because my Irish is not very good, and on my long list of improvements is to improve my Irish. Well, the list of improvements is long. I can't do it all. It's terrible, because I should be improving my Irish, but then I was trying to learn Mima. That's where the quay comes in. and I also have to improve my fitness. So right now, fitness is going first because I'm very unfit, and I, after this, need to go for a walk, and because otherwise I'm not going to live much longer, and I need to live to help with this peace activism. Yeah, so that's the plan there. Anyway, so they say here that Vivian Silver, so Jonathan says his goal in life is to decrease the overall pain. Oh boy, am I with you there? And suffering in the region, not to avenge the murder of his mother, who was a trailblazing co-founder of the peace organization Women Wage Peace. And I'm just going to stop here. So Rachel Gilmore, my little darling, and Charlie Angus, my little darling, would you please get off your high horses about Mark Carney and whatever he said about Zionism, which probably was a stupid thing to say, but so what? Why don't you please interview some peace activists? You did interview some very intelligent Iranians, and thank you for that. That was good. And the more we hear from intelligent people who are actually trying to improve things, the better. But I would like to hear from peace activists. And I have been in Canada since 1985, and I'm sick of the fact that when I came to Canada from Ireland after being involved in the Irish ecumenical peace movement, which wasn't all that much fun, let me tell you, first thing some people said to me was, oh, you must support the IRA. But no, I don't support people who blow other people up for fun. No, they're claiming to do it for political purposes, but I don't. I'm not fond of bombs at all. I'm also not fond of, what do you call them, those land mines. No, and bombing planes. No, guns. I don't like explosions at all. Yeah. So did I approve of the provisional IRA dumping bombs, like blowing up Woolworths, so that little boy, Wilf Ball, who was 3 years old, who was going in there to buy a little present from his mother, got blown to bits? No! So please, don't tell me I must support the IRA, because I don't. Do I support the UVF or the UDF or any militia? No. No. Yeah. And am I really delighted with the military? No. But do I think a well-trained, very disciplined military force can be a good defense? Unfortunately, yes. Look at the state of the planet. But they have to be well-trained. Anyway. And disciplined. Yeah, sorry. And the people I really admire are peace activists and people who think about peace, work for peace, sing about peace. These are the people I like. All right. So anyway, these young men who are doing everything they possibly can, despite the fact that their poor mother was killed on October the 7th, say that she was 74 and she was well known for her work promoting shared society movements and especially women-led coalition building between Israeli Jews and Palestinian Arabs. And let me tell you this, and I can tell you this from what went on in Ireland, that when you have a room full of men in suits, there's never going to be peace. Never. No, you have to involve women. Are there women who are harridans, who create death and destruction wherever they go? Absolutely. Look at Margaret Thatcher, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher. Death-loving incarnate. Everything she touched, she destroyed and created horror around her. Yes, but who really helped in Northern Ireland? Mo Molan, a delightful English woman who did great things, along with a whole long list. God bless Bernie Devlin, 21 years old, and her courage. Yes. And, of course, my darlings, Mairead Corrigan. Poor Mairead, I don't know what age she is now. She's been doing wonderful things her entire life, and she went on a hunger fast because of what's happening in Gaza. Because she really loves children, and she really wants peace. Yeah, and she worked with Betty Williams, and they deserved their Nobel Prize for Peace. They very much deserved it. And probably this Vivian Silver should be nominated too, I would think. Yeah, anyway, she was at her home in Kibbutz, which she helped build, when terrorists entered the kibbutz that morning. Yonatan had managed to speak and exchange WhatsApp messages with his mother that morning. Her death in the attack was later confirmed. I saw pain, loss, trauma. like a substance, a quantity in the world, and I suffered from it. Jonathan speaking about the shift in his life post October the 7th. And you know what, Jonathan? So did I. Even though I'm away from all of that and I didn't lose my mother in a bomb, but I was devastated on October the 8th because I was like, oh my God, this is bad. Terrible, terrible things have happened and worse things are coming. In my logic, I need to reduce the quantity of that pain, loss, and trauma in the world. And I so agree with you, Jonathan. Jonathan says the idea of retaliation makes no sense. If I want adults to suffer, it means I raise the amount of suffering of the world in general. And in order for us not to suffer from what I have suffered, in order for my kids not to have to go through this same experience, I need to reduce it. And you know what? Jonathan Zygan is 1,000 times correct, people. He is correct. And I don't know why, otherwise, good people don't come up with this idea more often. Anyway, Zygan was in Toronto this week, along with his older brother, Chen Zygan, a PhD student in archaeology at the University of Connecticut, for a special event, June 4th, in tribute to their mother. Organised by a committee led by Sylvia's closest friend, Lynn Mitchell, the event was one of the first presentations by Women Wage Peace Canada East, with backing from the New Israel Fund of Canada. Last year, women wage peace groups formed around the world, including a Canadian one with Vancouver and Winnipeg members. And last year, I tried to organize some little thing. So last year or the year before last? I'm trying to think. Yeah, no, it was the year before last. I tried to organize a peace meeting and I rented a hall and 4 of my good friends came along with one of my sons. Sweet. And that was it. And I had all these songs about peace that I wanted people to sing, and nobody who came liked to sing, so we didn't sing. We just chatted. And I wondered what to do next. And I'm still wondering what to do to get people here to come together and try and talk about peace. And I've gone and got my t-shirt. So that's as far as I've got, because I don't know what else to be doing. Anyway, the Israeli organization, along with the Palestinian organization Women of the Sun, were nominated for a 2024 Nobel Peace Prize, and they won the 2025 David Rockefeller Bridging Leadership Award at a ceremony in New York. Well done. Now, Tel Aviv-based Jonathan, who quit his job as a social worker to dedicate his life to continuing Vivian's work, described the need for shifting the circumstances in which people can find themselves killing others. Exactly. Whether as radicalized attackers or as trained soldiers in the Israeli Defense Force. Sitting beside his brother Chen in Mitchell's home in Toronto, Jonathan told the Canadian Jewish Network, it's a fundamental change of circumstances for viewing one another that would create conditions for lasting peace between Israelis and Palestinians. I see it as we need to promote the effort to create settings that do not bring us to meet through this terrible component in human beings. And I think that it is realistic that countries and combating sides are able to shift the circumstances and the settings in order to not let young men engage in battle and violent resistance and all of that. Then we would have been able to meet the specific person who killed our mother in a different kind of atmosphere where we wouldn't have encountered the capability to murder. The brothers spoke at the event, which raised funds for the Vivian Silver Impact Award, a prize they helped create, along with the US-based New Israel Fund. The award is given to one Jewish and one Palestinian woman annually to support and recognize those continuing the work of peace building and women-led organization. Peace activism has become a dangerous activity for civilians in Gaza ever since the Second Intifada, which started in 2000, and for years under Hamas authority, Jonathan notes. Now, as Rachel mentioned, and I agree with you in this, Rachel, all the people being killed are precious, loving, individual human beings. who each have their own likes and dislikes and interests and dreams and wishes. And everyone deserves to live. And every child everywhere deserves to live and to develop and be loved and be protected from abuse and mistreatment. And that is not an easy thing to do because sadly, probably after millennia of these dreadful wars, uh, we have high rates of child abuse within families, high rates of partner abuse, domestic abuse, and all this abuse and violence and sadism and mistreatment is increased dramatically whenever there is violence in general in the society and whenever a society is taken over by criminals and people who use power, who feel they're entitled to dominate and coerce and abuse others. And once this starts to happen, it is very difficult to reverse. Um, yeah. His mother had been a long-time volunteer with the Israeli organization Road to Recovery, driving sick patients from Gaza to Israeli hospitals for appointments and back, often several times weekly. In the Israeli and Palestinian civil society peace movement, there is a recognition of a different starting point that he often sees in the North American discourse around Israel, the Gaza war, and a permanent solution for peace, safety, and national self-realization. There is a consensus about the overlooked fact that both peoples are there to stay. And I think that's what Prime Minister Carney was trying to get to when he made the unfortunate comment. Anyway, I'm not even going to repeat it because it's got people so in a tizzy. But I think what he was attempting to say was, as I've heard said by other people, that the Palestinians and the Israelis are bound together, just as Quebecers and Newfoundlanders in Labrador have to get together, whether they like it or not. Anyway, yeah. So that both peoples are there to stay, and we need to shift from a two opposing sides violently negotiating or not negotiating on the rights to the lands to a mutual equality-based problem-solving group that figures out shared problems on how to share the land and not destroy this beautiful land and poison it with these terrible, terrible white phosphorus and all these bombs and all the pollution and stuff. Because our future is shared, we need to start cutting back from that understanding into pragmatic steps towards we don't see this in social media polarization in North America. We see only more division, only more dehumanization, only more fantasies that each side can prevail and be exclusive on the land. In North America, when people choose sides and don't elevate the discourse of a shared future, they just feed into that unrealistic fantasy that the Palestinians will be liberated and form, I don't know, an Islamic nation or Palestinian exclusive state on the land. That will never happen by resistance, he said. For Israeli, it's a different unrealistic vision, he says, that we will control the whole of the promised land and live secure lives in well-being. That will never happen through sheer military means. We in the peace movement, civil society, we're working together towards that shared future, whatever it is, whether there's a sustainable two-state solution, a confederation, or another resolution, we will solve it technically when we sit down together in the room from a standpoint of safety and equality. Meanwhile, someone raising a flag in Canada or the United States and calling for intifada is counterproductive to the Palestinians in Palestine, according to Jonathan Saigon, Similarly, when you raise an Israeli flag and blindly state we have a right to defend ourselves when we are actually aggressors, you are counterproductive to the Israelis, to the Jewish people in Israel on the ground. If you were able, like we are doing tonight in Toronto, to bring diaspora Jews and Palestinians to talk together under the banner of peace, under the understanding that we need to end the occupation and solve the conflict together, then you promote both of our people's ability to live good lives in Israel and Palestine, he said ahead of the event. The international community has a role to play, and it's one Jonathan feels could be more assertive in ending the war and promoting a diplomatic process, holistic, that ends the conflict in general. We don't do it by ourselves. He approved of the joint statement issued last month by Canada, France, and the UK that rebuked Israel, my apologies, and warned the country of sanctions for continuing its military occupation in Gaza and the blockade that it had imposed on humanitarian aid, and called for consequences if Israel expands settlements into the West Bank. When Canada, France, and the UK came out with this announcement, I said, better late than ever, said Jonathan. A lot of times, conflicts erupt between the two sides, but they are always either enabled or solved with the intervention of third parties. We, up until now, have enjoyed only the enablement part of the international community's interventions, said Jonathan. We need to start enjoying the capacity to solve problems, and ending the war is a necessity, a necessary first step in our ability to live viable lives in Israel and Palestine. Sitting next to Jonathan, his older brother Chen pointed out the tendency for both sides of the Israeli-Palestine discourse to focus on righting the wrongs of the past instead of forging solutions to those living on the land and their future generations. We are saying don't ask how we right the wrongs of the past because there's no end to how much further back you can go, said Jen, and how you can bring justice to our grandchildren and not our grandparents. The sold out event in Toronto drew around 320 people for the evening, and Lynn Mitchell, and featured several presentations, including video messages from the inaugural winners of the award, Dr. Rula Hardal, a Palestinian citizen of Israel, and May Pundak, an Israeli Jew. The award comes with a prize of $15,000 to each of the two winners. A musical combo that included vocalist Erez Zobari, with her Yemenite heritage, and Aviva Chernik performed some of Silver's favourite tunes for the evening, including Leonard Cohen's Dance Me to the End of Love and Simon and Garfunkel's Bridge Over Troubled Water. Speakers also included Rabbi Donna Kirschbaum of Women Wage Peace Canadian branch, and Amal El-Sana Al-Juj, I hope I said that right, who formerly co-directed the Arab Jewish Committee, AGEEC-NISB, with Silver, and is now an associate professor at McGill University School of Social Work and the executive director of the organization Promoting Leadership for Empowerment, Development and Justice. Israeli documentary filmmaker Hilla Medelia, who's had worked on a film about Silver's life and legacy, attended the Toronto event to share a sneak peek at their work in progress. Missing Silver, a co-production with Montreal-based producer Ina Fishman, began film production. Mitchell told the Canadian Jewish Network the event was important for the community and that it was dubbed In Her Voice because everyone who spoke presented their reality, and the charge to the audience was to listen as Vivian would, without reaction and judgment, she said on June the 5th. People didn't have to agree, only listen, she says. Be open to more than one reality in the conflict, and it's hard to listen when you're afraid. How can anybody become a peacemaker, and what can you do? Everyone who participated spoke to that, Israelis, Jewish and Palestinian. Listen as Vivian would listen, the audience was told. Mitchell said that's her legacy. Yeah. And now, so then, this is an email I received from about Harat's article, and again, it's talking about the interview with Lynn Mitchell. Yeah. And this says Raja Khoury and Jeffrey Wilkinson are the Canadian co-authors of The Wall Between: What Jews and Palestinians Don't Want to Know About Each Other. The book was released by Simon and Schuster on October the 3rd, 2023, and the authors expected nice turnouts for the launch events their agents had scheduled around the country. They had no idea that 4 days later, Palestinians from Gaza would carry out the biggest single-day massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, prompting a massive retaliation in which tens of thousands, if not a lot more, of Palestinians would be killed. To be fair, says Lebanese-born Khoury, who has been active in interfaith dialogue programs with Canadian Jews for nearly 20 years, their book draws decent crowds, just not of the type they had anticipated. Initially, the only people interested in hearing us fell into the category of none of the above, as in Canadians not directly connected to the situation, he recounts. They were trying to understand what was going on because all of a sudden this conflict 1,000 miles away had landed in our living rooms, our schools, our workplaces, you name it. And that created a lot of interest. But for those directly connected to events in Israel and Gaza who were grieving and in a state of intense shock, it was still too raw. Canadian Jews and Muslims eventually started showing up at their talks, but by then, Khoury says, he had become increasingly skeptical about interfaith programs based primarily on dialogue, as were many of those in which he participated over the years. In recent months, he has become active in the newly formed Canadian chapter of Standing Together, which is what this t-shirt is about, an Israeli movement of Jews and Palestinians focused on ending the occupation and promoting freedom and equality for all. Standing Together has been a major force behind the latest wave of protests in Israel, as well as the ongoing campaign for a ceasefire and hostage deal, which now enjoys widespread public support in Israel. If you want to look at the upside of the things that have happened here in Canada since October the 7th, I would say it is in the growth of this particular movement, says Khoury, and so would I. Folks who are progressives and fair-minded here needed a home, and many seem to have found it in Standing Together. It has been able to appeal to Palestinians and their supporters more than other peace groups previously did. It is not only Israeli movement it is not the only Israeli movement focused on Jewish-Arab cooperation to find a home in Canada since October the 7th, Women Wage Peace, which was founded after the 2014 Israel-Gaza war, has in the past year set up chapters in Toronto, Winnipeg, and Vancouver, and I would like to have a chapter in St. John's or anywhere around Newfoundland and Labrador or Atlantic Canada. If anybody's interested, please contact me. Yes. So now, and now has 400 women on its Canadian mailing list. Canadian-born Vivian Silva, who was murdered on October 7th in her home on Kibbutz Be'eri, has been a prominent leader of Women Wage Peace. It was her childhood friend from Winnipeg, Lynn Mitchell, who took the initiative to bring the movement to Canada. I have never been an activist before, but we are really trying to keep Vivian's message alive, says Mitchell, who grew up in Winnipeg and now lives in Toronto. Recruiting Muslim women to the group has been a challenge, she says, because the Palestinian diaspora in Canada was very impacted by the war. Still, several young Palestinian women recently joined the planning committee for a major organizational event that will take place in June to honor Silva. In yet another sign that Jewish-Muslim bridge-building initiatives are not a lost cause, as many had feared, an Israeli-Palestine student dialogue group at York University that had operated for quite a few years was recently resurrected. The group, originally set up by students, folded during the global pandemic, but soon after October 7th, Randall Schnur, a sociologist in the Jewish Studies Department, took the initiative to revive it. There's a lot of polarization at our campus, and I'm very passionate about respectful conversations and bringing people together, he says. Of the 25 students in the group who meet every 6 weeks for an evening dialogue session, in addition to holding public panels, both on and off campus, to showcase the work, the majority are Jewish. It's a challenge to find parity, concedes Schnur. These students who believe in dialogue are often in tension with their own communities who don't support dialogue, which sometimes makes them feel they're betraying their own people, so it's a tough navigation. But since the Jewish cohort include both Zionists and non-Zionists, says Schnur, it's always possible to count on a diversity of opinion at these gatherings. And I really think this is key. Diversity is life. Life is diverse. And people are diverse. And you're always going to have multiple different opinions. But that shouldn't mean that people start attacking, harming, hurting, torturing, killing people who have a different opinion. Yeah. Now I'm reading from JSpace Canada, which is pro-Israel, pro-peace, pro-democracy, another Jewish group that I send small amounts of money to and receive newsletters. And this was earlier in May. It says, the last living American hostage, Eden Alexander, was released from Hamas captivity. The development was significant, not only because it marked a rare positive movement in another words, bleak and stagnant landscape since Israel broke the ceasefire and hostage deal in March. Since then, the only advancements have been intensified ground operations or the continued blockade of food and aid into Gaza by Israel, and an overwhelming sense of helplessness shared by both Israelis and Palestinians, equally frustrated by their leadership and powerless under rising authoritarianism, which is such a problem in so many places, including, sadly, right now in the US. Alexander's release stood out for another reason. It was achieved without Israeli involvement. The negotiation was carried out directly between the US and Hamas, bypassing Israel entirely, a dramatic departure from long-standing US policy, which has historically avoided direct talks with the group. This alone signals a seismic shift. The symbolism here cuts to the core of Zionist ideology and the founding promise of Israel. The state of Israel was meant to be a sanctuary for Jews, a shield against persecution where no one else would stand with us, not only to offer refuge, but to ensure that Jewish lives could be defended by Jews in a sovereign state. Yet Alexander's release revealed a painful irony. It was not the Jewish state that saved him, but his American passport. An American serving in the IDF who risked something foreign to the fact should give both Israelis and diaspora Jews pause. Israel's promise to its citizens not merely the basic protection expected from any nation, it is existential, foundational, it is raison d'etre, and yet in this moment that promise rang hollow. Meanwhile, this development unfolded against the backdrop of Donald Trump's visit to the Middle East, notably skipping Israel and instead focusing on Gulf states. True to form, Trump was unpredictable, accepting a private jet from Qatar, pledging to lift sanctions on Syria and denouncing past US foreign policy interventionists and neocons while in Saudi Arabia, thereby distancing himself from previous Republican administrations. The pro-Israel right found itself in disarray. Many assumed Trump would continue to cater to Netanyahu's government and his extremist coalition partners, but Trump's message was clear. He doesn't care about Israel, nor for that matter about Trump cares about Trump. The progressive left, however, was also confounded. For years, the left has criticized US interventions designed to impose American-style democracy abroad, often causing long-term instability. Now, Trump's snub of Israel, including Netanyahu's humiliating trip to Washington last month, with nothing to show for it, seemingly lit the bold disengagement many hoped Biden would pursue before the war spiraled in mass death, destruction, and starvation. But there is no cause for celebration. Trump's foreign policy is not grounded in values, not in justice, peace, or human rights. His isolationist pivot does not stem from concern for Palestinians or democratic integrity. It stems from a disdain for the liberal world order and embrace of transactional politics where loyalty goes to the highest bidder. Dreadful. This isn't principled non-invention. It is the resurrection of imperialism, of might makes right, of alliances with strong men and autocrats. Trump's past flirtations with annexing Greenland and Canada have not been abandoned or sidelined, but the opposite. He is showing up exactly how little he cares about borders, international law, self-determination, now in both words and deed. In Trump's world order, preference is not given to those with whom we share values, but rather to the highest bidder. And in this world, Israeli leadership, long accustomed to special treatment, may find itself dangerously outmatched. The pro-Israel right must rethink what it means to be a true friend of Israel. If they have the ear of Netanyahu and his allies more than those who have long argued that being a friend of Israel does not mean blind loyalty, they must now use their influence and confront reality. Blind loyalty has not protected Israel. It has isolated it and imperiled its future. Progressives too must tread carefully. Applauding Trump's moves simply because they undermine Netanyahu is short-sighted. These shifts also undermine democracy, multilateralism, and the international order that protects self-determination not just for Israelis but for Palestinians as well. As some look to Trump's unpredictability as a potential shortcut to ending the war in Gaza, they must not lose sight of the broader picture. The occupied West Bank is literally and figuratively on fire. The IDF and settlers act with impunity. US sanctions on violent settlers have been revoked under Trump, emboldening an already aggressive movement. At the same time, the Palestinian Authority is increasingly marginalized, even as Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas appeared via video at a joint Israeli-Palestinian peace rally, committed to non-violence and two-state solutions between the river and the sea. US negotiations are being held with Hamas that further weakens the Palestinian Authority and signals a return to this dangerous status quo that helped lead to October 7th. Now with the US reshuffling its alliances, the stakes are rising, not just for Palestinians, but for Israel's long-term security as well. If there's a lesson in all of that, it is that isolation, whether self-imposed or external reinforced, is not a strategy, it's a warning. Am Levadat Yishkan, a nation that dwells alone, was never meant to be aspirational. In today's world of volatile alliances and transactional politics, Israel's refusal to adapt, reflect, or engage meaningfully is not resilience, it is recklessness. The hub that led to October 7th is not a closed chapter, it is a trajectory. And without course correction, it points towards something far more catastrophic. This is not just a political failure, it is a failure of Zionism. A Jewish state that cannot safeguard its citizens, that alienates allies, that abandons democratic principles and moral clarity, is not fulfilling its founding promise. It is betraying it. The critique of the Netanyahu government is no longer the domain of dissenters or diaspora activists. It is now the most urgent existential reckoning the state has faced. To defend Israel, one must now challenge the very government that claims to act in its name. And the recommended readings are Shalom Hartman's Institute's Rabbi Daniel Hartman speaks to Haaretz, a newspaper in Jerusalem, about why an Israeli state that is less democratic is less Jewish and why he still believes in peace. And also how Saudi Arabia changed between the last Trump presidency and now, and what is the future of not only the region but its alliances abroad, which is published in the New York Times. And in the New Yorker, there was a wide-ranging cross-section of Israeli reservists are refusing to show up for duty and questioning not only the war's aims, but the aims of the Netanyahu government. Former IDF spokesperson Peter Lerner writes in Jewish News UK that Israel must reframe its victory over Hamas for the very future and survival of the country. What the release of American-Israeli hostage Eden Alexander says about who has the power to release the remaining hostages and who is actually willing to use it is published in the foreword. Yeah. So, and then this is from Canadian Friends of Peace Now, a group I joined after the last Gaza war, because they seemed at that time to be trying to bring peace between Palestinians and Israelis, and they say June 27, 2025, amidst the dust clouds of war and euphoria, it is still too early to assess the outcomes of the strikes on Iran's nuclear project. So that's highly contentious, as we know. What happened, whether this will help or cause far more problems. What is clear is that Israel stands today at a critical crossroads for its future. Will we know how to leverage military gains into a strategic political move that can lead to regional peace? Without an agreement between the United States and Iran that removes the nuclear threat, Israel may be left with a tactical achievement alone. The real challenge and opportunity lies in translating a military success into a new reality centered around regional normalization and a two-state solution. Israel's great misfortune is that the only ones in the current leadership with a vision are the messianic extremists, who are terrifying, who believe that every disaster brings salvation. October the 7th, wars on more and more fronts, economic collapse on the unraveling Israeli society. No, not what I would hope to see. And I certainly am horrified about the suffering in Gaza and the suffering of the Palestinian people. And I want that suffering to be brought to an end, there to be a ceasefire and massive aid to come to the Palestinians in Gaza, but also in West Bank, East Jerusalem, in different camps, wherever they are. Yeah. The way the census war in Gaza is being conducted shows that this government is not aiming for regional alliances, but rather for deepening a state of war, a state that ensures its political survival, even at the cost of sacrificing civilians, soldiers, and hostages. These heavy, heavy costs compel us as a civil opposition to step into the political arena with initiative, vision, and a genuine commitment to a negotiated agreement. Otherwise, even the boldest military successes will be squandered and become historic missed opportunities. We must transform military achievements into a new regional reality centered on establishing peace arrangements in the Middle East. This is the time for broad alliances. This is the time for normalization, for determining Israel's permanent borders, for the establishment of a Palestinian state, and for ending the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. After the war in Gaza, the war in Lebanon, and even after the war in Iran, peace is positive. But peace requires leadership that is not in love with war. Nothing truer was ever said. So I just wanted to read some statement made by people who have a connection to Canada and to Israel and Palestine, and who really, really are working for peace. Now, there's also there are other excellent organizations working on behalf of Palestinians, and there's a group now meeting Christians for in support of Palestinians and against Christian nationalism and messianic Zionism, which is a terrifying thing. So I have to go after my doggy, and this is nearly an hour. I'm sorry that this is so long. All I am saying is that I live in Newfoundland and Labrador. I want to get involved with other people who are interested in supporting Standing Together or Women Wage Peace or Friends of Combatant, Breaking the Silence. Any of the organizations that involve disparate people from different sides who really want to have a ceasefire, really want to save lives, help the helpless, help children, help everybody rebuild their lives and work on a pathway to peace, rather than fighting over clearly what the what's happening now in Gaza and has happened in Gaza is wrong, and I totally agree with the International Criminal Court, and I think it's horrific that Marco Rubio is now going after those well qualified international judges who asked that the leaders of Hamas and Netanyahu and Gallant be brought to trial, since the leaders of Hamas were killed. But certainly, I support the idea of an international criminal court, but it's not going to work until the really big, powerful countries, which right now is America, Russia, and China, and their allies, actually decide that justice for everyone is important. Okay, shalom, peace, 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 healing. Thank you.